welcome everybody to the Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing, Tuesday, January 10th. Can I have a motion to open the meeting?
So moved.
And second? All in favor of opening the public hearing?
Aye.
We have a pending decision,
Yes, his camera's not on. Okay.
case number 3132, Lee Cruder, 370 Great Plains Lane. I understand we're
It's Great
taking-
Plains Road, just to be on the record properly. I don't know of any Great Plains Lane. I don't either.
370 Great Plains Lane.
Sorry.
Is
But it is
370 Great
proceeding.
Plains
I don't know
Road.
why it's a lane.
No, that's what was written, so we'll correct that. We are finalizing a covenant to be recorded to protect the wetlands buffer, but it's taking some time, so I will motion to reopen the hearing in order to adjourn the hearing pending receipt of a recordable covenant that is acceptable to legal counsel and our environmental consultant. Does that seem like the direction we should be taking, Jeffrey?
Yes, Chairman, and I did have the chance to speak with the applicant's representative, who's here tonight, to advise that the board may do that. I have a draft that I'll speak to Mr. Voorhees about, and then after his review, if I may then reach out to applicant, just so that we're sure we're all on the same, literally on the same page with that. And then, obviously, it'll be to the board before that, and then I'll reach out to the applicant.
Okay, so this is really to give us the time to finalize the covenant. So I will motion to, should we
She has to come up to
You
the,
have to direct the consultant to write the wetlands permit before you close? Okay,
no, we're reopening.
okay,
So our motion is to reopen.
okay.
The motion is to reopen case number 3132, 370 Great Plains Lane, and at the same time, following its reopening, adjourn 370 Great Plains Lane pending receipt of a recordable covenant to protect the wetlands buffer, a covenant that is acceptable to both our environmental consultant and our legal counsel, then of course, the board as well. So can I have a second on that motion?
second.
And then all in favor?
Aye.
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 So was that both to open and to close
To
No,
open and
and
to
adjourn.
adjourn.
and to adjourn? Okay. Because I also share the applicant's question, just at what point would I be asked to prepare that permit for a subsequent meeting? That would be after we review the covenant?
I'm sorry, Chick, I'm not able to hear anything that you're saying.
I think I heard Charles too in my ear. So at some point, I don't think there are any technical issues other than the covenant. We do have the expanded buffer. Obviously, the house has been moved, the front yard has been modified. At some point, this board will direct me to prepare a wetlands permit for a future meeting. And I just want to make sure that that
Yes.
is.
So, so to clarify,
Yes.
reading the covenant will, I believe, encourage some board members to look upon the application for the necessary permit and variances more favorably if the board feels comfortable that a wetlands buffer will be implemented. It's not an indication
For the
That-
permit, yeah.
that the approval is in hand or pending. It's in order for us to then take the covenant, review it, and include it in our deliberations, but I certainly think it's persuasive to many board members to see it in hand prior to voting.
Got it. Okay. So I'll wait for that further direction after we get that material. Thank you.
Well, is he being directed to write anything?
No,
No.
nothing at this
Okay.
point.
Just checking. You've got to go to the microphone. Thank you.
Just because
Is
this
it
is,
possible to work on the sound a little bit today? Excuse me? Very hard to hear here in the public.
Do you hear us?
testing,
Can you
testing.
hear her now,
I
Melissa?
barely
Can you hear?
Chick when I went to the microphone. I couldn't hear Susan. I just heard Melissa well.
I think you have to go right into the mic.
Speaking to the microphone.
Okay, speaking to the mic. Again, this is new. So can you now, since you've opened it, can you close it pending? Like what I'm trying to understand is, why does it have to remain open? If you have it here, you can submit that to the board, the CNR is correct, or the covenant, and we can close it tonight, correct?
Because the board needs to review the covenant, consider the covenant, and then deliberate.
Right, but can't you close the hearing? Because no other information's coming in, correct?
I don't know that. The board is receiving the covenant, which they haven't reviewed. They'll want to review it, and that's why they've reopened, to
But the
consider
board-
it and deliberate, and then to make a determination. Suppose they receive the covenant and then have further questions,
Mhm.
then they would have to again reopen after it's again been closed.
You mean further questions regarding the actual
Yes.
document itself?
Yes.
Do you have to reopen a meeting just to do changes to a CNR?
We're reopening it in order, we had thought we would have received this by now. It seems like it's taking longer than we had anticipated, so we don't want to be under any timeline by closing the hearing. So we just figured we would adjourn it, and then the board can read it. It is an essential part of our deliberations to see that wetlands buffer. I mean, we talked about that throughout, the hearing, that was going to be an important persuasive element. So whether we adjourn it or close it, I'm not sure I see the difference, but just to make sure.
I think just the fact that it's open to the public, just the
Yes.
fact that it's limited to only the CNR, I think that's what my concern is.
Why is it limited?
Well, the adjournment is limited to reviewing the
Oh, it's just
CFRs. We can
Okay.
do that. Is that
That would be,
helpful?
I'd feel better
Okay, so
about
it's
that, yes.
adjourned, but it's adjourned for the purposes of completing
For only
the
that.
covenant
Okay.
restriction. Does that seem?
That's fine. It's being closed subject to the review of the written document. So there's no further testimony being offered, but it's open for the purpose of review of the written document
Yeah.
and any questions that may flow from that, but not for testimony and other documents to be submitted.
That's what I wanted to clarify. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. And with that, just to clarify, can we then, I would ask if the motion is amended to reflect that, and then if we could just revote, please.
Sure. Okay, so the motion is, and feel free to correct me, the motion is to,
The way I understood it, Chairman, was that it would be reopened for the purpose of the board to review the declaration of covenants as prepared by council and for consideration of the same, and only for that purpose and any questions that flow from that, but not otherwise being reopened.
well said. I couldn't say it any better. Okay, so can we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, we're glad you did. We have, in case number 3149, Claire and David Kershey, 37 Pheasant Close North. We have a written decision on which to vote, so I will move to accept the written decision by legal counsel in the case of Claire and David Kershey, case number 3149, 37 Pheasant Close North, which accepts and approves the variance request for the front porch, 72.38 feet from the front yard where 80 feet was required. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor of accepting the council's legal decision as written, please say aye.
Aye.
I,
So we go then to our next ongoing matter, which is case number 3145, 44 Hillcrest Lane. Does the applicant wish to?
May I just-
Excuse me, Chair, I don't have that you made a motion on Stephen Hickey. I have that if there's a request on the,
We haven't.
I thought we had at the last meeting accepted the adjournment. Is that not correct?
I thought
I
for,
did not hear that.
I thought for Stephen Hickey, if that wasn't clear, I thought that one had been adjourned to the March meeting. As to the next case after that, well, I'll get to that in just a moment. But as to Stephen Hickey, I had recalled that, but perhaps just so the record is clear, if there could be a motion to carry it
No
to March.
I will motion in case number 3145, Stephen Hickey, 1377 Meadow Lane, to adjourn to the last meeting in March 2023. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 And then if I may, Mr. Chairman, as to number 3, case number 3147, 64 Down East Lane, I had spoken with and received a communication from counsel for the applicant this afternoon. They were respectfully requesting an adjournment to follow up with the building department regarding their application.
So we can motion to accept the applicant's request for adjournment in case number 3147, Andrew Fleiss, 64 Down East Lane. Okay, can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor of accepting the applicant's request for an adjournment in case number 3147, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Chairman.
Now we are ready for case number 3145, 44 Hillcrest Lane.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board and council. My name's Denise Shern. I'm an attorney with the Adam Miller Group, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant. One of the property owners is here with me tonight, and also his architect, Mr. Slight, is in the audience as well in case you have any questions for him.
He's on.
Oh, he is? Okay.
Am I in now?
Just say yes.
Okay, thank you. Got it. While that's trying to connect, I will just bring the board up to date with where we are. At the last meeting, the board had asked us to do some research, and we submitted some information for you, but it was too late for you to really review it and think about it and ask any cogent questions that you might have. So you requested that we adjourn for that purpose, for you to review those materials and to ask any questions that you might have. As a reminder, there were several decisions that I had pulled from the last couple of years that had approved accessory structures in front yards. For the most part, the cases that I saw needed variance relief on top of dimensional relief on top of just needing a variance for being situated in the front yard. As a reminder for this request tonight, we are simply seeking a variance to put the accessory structures in the front yard, but we meet all dimensional setbacks, coverage, any other limitation that you might think of. We're turning to tonight with a third revision to the plans, which I was hoping to show you on the screen.
Recording?
Am I what?
It looks like you're recording.
It just says screen broadcast.
You want to, I'm trying to share.
I'm sorry. I don't want to frustrate everybody. I literally took a class on this and thought I had mastered it, but it's just not going to my screen. Okay. So the revision that was made to the plans came from one of the board members had asked that we revise the interior of the one-car garage so that it would be more difficult for the applicant to modify the interior of that structure so that you could access the bathroom from the garage area itself. So that was the purpose of the revisions that you see before you tonight. Do you have any questions about the revisions before I move on? 'Cause I
What
know-
is the number of the plan, I mean, the date of the plan that you're describing that I can't see? Do you know?
Bill, do you have the date?
Looks like January 3rd.
Be nice if I had it.
So my comment was just that I had hoped that the bathroom would be laid out so that you couldn't realistically have a doorway from the
From the
garage into the bathroom.
Okay.
So I do see that things have been moved,
Yep.
but not really in the way that I was suggesting.
Okay.
If you're looking at the plan, you can see that there could easily be a door opposite the exterior door.
Okay.
What I was saying was that if we start from left to right, we have the shower right there, and then we would go toilet or sink, and then we would go, remaining sink and or toilet. So the
Got it.
entire wall, according to the garage,
Would be filled with structures.
Filled with structures.
Gotcha. So the wall that is closest to the garage would have like the toilet or the sink or whatever, so that
All
you
3
wouldn't-
items
would be on that
party
side.
to the garage, so that there could not be a door
Okay.
there. So I apologize if I was not.
No, I don't. Bill,
As
do you need to
clear as
comment
possible.
on that, or
Yeah, I'm sorry, I did misunderstand what you had said. I had thought you were simply asking that we not have the toilet on that western wall. I can easily make a note on the drawings even tonight and initial it and
I would
be
be
sure
fine with
that,
that, yeah.
that we are, because we have no objection to that change whatsoever. And I apologize for misunderstanding your
No,
request.
don't apologize. I don't think I was clear enough, as long as it's part of the official building permit set of plans.
Right, because you had
Then-
mentioned, I think we need to move the toilet, and so I misunderstood what
Yeah,
you were
that's
saying.
fine. Apologies, and I'm sorry if this delays things, but
Well, I would be happy as part of addressing your thing, that I would initial your plan in your file, and I'll give you a new one, but I'd be happy to
yeah, I'm
Mark
fine
it
with,
and
I'm
initial
fine
it
with that
tonight.
if the board is fine with that.
yeah, okay, thank you.
So thank you for those comments and the comments from the last 2 meetings, because I think that the proposal that you have before you has definitely improved from where we started. I do believe that the proposal is more modest than it was when we first began. We've reduced the size of the structure from 520 to 442 square feet, which is a 15% reduction in, impacting lot coverage much less than we would have if we had the bigger structure. We've shifted that garage door so it no longer faces Miller Road. We have the setback from Miller Road has gone from 35 feet to 38 feet. So again, lessening the impact on the frontage of Miller Road. The structure itself, as I said, has been repositioned so that you can enter from the side. The roof shape has been changed to a hip style so that the visual mass of the structure has been reduced. And the Miller Road facade has been simplified so that the structure is modest in scale and character. And as we just discussed, the interior modifications have been made, but we will revise those in accordance with your recommendation. As a reminder to the board, the reason that we're here tonight is that 44 Hillcrest is a through lot. So it goes from one street to another, creating 2 technical front yards, which means that the only building that can be placed on this property as a matter of right without seeking zoning board relief is a single-family residence. So all of the other amenities that most of us are used to having, sheds, swimming pools, anything you can think that's not your single-family residence, would not be permitted on this property, including, say, a deck, patio, anything that you can think of that's not part of the single-family residence. That does create a hardship for the applicant. And even though the standard now has changed and you don't have to prove hardship anymore, you end up doing a weighing analysis, benefit to the applicant versus detriment to the community. Here, the benefit to the applicant is very, very clear. They either can have accessory structures or they can't. So being allowed to have an accessory structure on their property, I really can't understate how, or overstate how important that is to them as a family. In contrast, the detriment to the community. We've had, we received a sort of a generic opposition document that was submitted at the last meeting that was signed by several neighbors. It wasn't very specific in terms of what they were complaining about, other than not wanting these structures built. There wasn't really more involved in that letter that gave me any guidance as to what we could change that would make it more amenable to them. And what the courts have said is that, you know, generic community opposition is not enough. You really need to have specific community opposition in order to deny a variance. And so when we spoke to the neighbors that we were able to contact and reach, we did ask them to put together specific letters. So you'll see that in the file from last month that there are several, I think 8 or 9 letters that are very specific to the application, calling out exactly why they believe that the variance request should be approved. All of those were written by the individuals. None of them were form letters. And I think you can tell that just by reading them. You know, they're very personalized. The property is a described property, which means it wasn't part of a subdivision. It predates planning boards and any sort of formal planning. It goes back to a time when you could just file a deed at the county in order to create your lot. So that's why we have these through lots in this development and in others. I did confirm that Alex's estimate of, I think, 9 through lots was correct in addition to our lot. I think the total is 10 for this neighborhood. We did submit at the last meeting aerial photographs of ox pasture and some other areas of the village that the board wanted to look at in evaluating whether or not there's a precedent for having accessory structures in the front yard. So those were submitted to you as well. At the very first meeting, I did go through the balancing test, and I prefer not to put you through it again unless you want me to, going through the 5 factors. But what I would say is that this really is the minimum request that we can make in terms of asking for relief. We're not going overboard. We're not asking for anything that's out of the ordinary or inconsistent with the way the village has been developed over the last several hundred years. And we believe that the applicants are entitled to the relief that they seek. I did summarize all the cases. I have them here so I can read them off to you. But again, I don't want to take up your time and do that unless you want me to focus on any of the specific cases that I submitted as examples. A few quotes just from some of the letters for the board to keep in mind. Laura Hope, I think she was the individual that spoke at the last meeting, maybe not, oh, sorry, said, you know, these positive trends in the community should not be stifled by rules that were meant to keep pools behind houses, which is exactly where this one will be placed. She states they're thrilled that additional homesteaders have made Hillcrest their home, as well as making it a diverse community, and they believe that a garage and a pool are completely in keeping with a residential neighborhood. There are lots of other great quotes from some of the other letters, but you have them in your file and you can read them. So I won't take up any more of your time unless you have specific questions for me.
Well, let's see. I have some questions, but do any of the board members have questions or concerns they'd like to express? Susan, do you have anything?
Not at this time.
And Julia?
I'd like to hear your questions first, Mark, if that's all right.
In reviewing the precedents, the first thing I'd like to say is, I don't think in the village we have a situation like we have here. This is very unusual, where you have, you know, two relatively busy streets on both sides of a property.
Mhm.
I know, you know, other streets in the village, all of them, I know Eel Pot Alley, you know, might resemble this, but Eel Pot Alley is a quiet, you know, street, if, you know, and rarely used.
Right.
Mary Lee, you know, it's not highly traveled. This is, you know, both these roads are highly traveled. So I find that different in a substantial way from any other place in the village, and yet in this area, this situation is not different from 9 other properties. So my concern would be that this board, you know,
You're afraid of setting a precedent?
of course.
Yeah, and
the cumulative effect of that. But that being said, I just want to express that as a
Sure.
concern. The first thing you referenced were the precedents. Is there anything that you would highlight where you have the board approving a variance for a front yard accessory structure for 2 accessory structures? In other words, for both a pool house or garage and a pool.
Yeah, yes, there were 2 that had pool houses and pools. But it's not a black and white answer, because one of them was a little bit confusing. They had granted the variance for the pool to be situated in the front yard years earlier, so they were sort of stuck with that decision. But then, and I only went back 2 years, so when it came before you again, asking for the pool house, I think they wanted to do something different with the swimming pool, actually bringing it closer to the front yard lot line. So the board said, we don't really want to encroach on the front yard lot line any more than we already are, so we're going to say no to that relief, but we've already granted the relief for placement in the front yard. So
For the pool.
yes, yeah.
That was hunting.
Yes, exactly, yeah. And the other one, let's see.
But just,
Yeah,
so
sure.
referencing hunting, it doesn't help, you know, your argument in that the board denied a request for a pool house in the front yard in that case.
They actually denied the variance for the dimensional relief, not the fact that it was in a front yard. So they had asked for a 50% variance, and which was substantial, and the board said no to the setback. Here, as I said, we're meeting all the setbacks. We don't need any of that relief. And as far as precedent, I would say that you're going to you are setting a precedent. You're going to set the example for what's going to happen on these other properties on the street. So I think you're setting a good precedent in this application. And I understand if other board members feel differently. It's my personal opinion, after 25 years of practice, that here, what we're looking at on this plan is not anything that's unusual or extraordinary.
No, I just wanted, so as far as the precedent goes, hunting is not really one that we can look at and say, oh, here's a case where you approved, you know, 2 accessory
Oh, I'm sorry.
structures in a front
I was
yard.
talking about people who asked for 2.
Yeah.
You want to see where they've granted 2.
If there's a precedent that we should be addressing or highlighting, that's fine. I don't think there is.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think we're going to find a precedent for this particular situation. But since you started off talking about precedents, I wanted to address that.
Well, and isn't the issue that it would be like a domino effect eventually that would completely change the nature of that particular neighborhood, I think?
Well, I think
The question is
sorry.
that okay?
Yeah, I guess the question is, do the 9 people or 10 people who have through lots, have the right to have common accessory structures on their property because they have through lots? What is the detriment to the community in allowing them to develop their properties like everyone else has in that community? Is the detriment to them in not being able to do that, is that outweighed by the benefit to the community and not having anything on this lot and just saying, no, you can't have any accessory structures? It's hard for me to imagine the benefit to the community in saying that you can't have common accessory structures on your property. If we were asking for something outrageous or outlandish or just inconsistent with the neighborhood, then I would be happy to work with you to make it more modest, but that's what we've been trying to do since we started.
But isn't, for me, 2 structures is a lot. And also the pool is very large. I mean, it's not that simple, and not everyone can have. I mean, you made a blanket statement that, you know, people can have this in the village of Southampton. Some people can have a pool because they can fit it on, and some people can't. I mean, it's just how zoning works, and that is an implicit promise for the neighbors, in a sense, that, you know, they know what's going to go on around them.
Well, it's
and when someone buys a property, I mean, they should be aware of the circumstance. I realize that your clients perhaps were not, but everyone's made it, at least I have, a mistake of this nature in one way or another.
No, I agree. I agree with that statement that, you know, that it'd be easy to look off that back porch and think that you've got a great big backyard that you can put your pool in, and then find out that you can't, would be disappointing. But yes, mistakes get made all the time. I just don't, it's hard for me to understand what the board would rely on in denying accessory structures, standard accessory structures on this property, which do fit. So they don't.
I don't think that a pool house and a pool are standard structures.
It's a garage and a pool.
Okay. The garage, maybe. I don't know.
We have to do our balancing. You're exactly
Oh, no,
right.
I
We have a balancing
understand.
test.
But I think
You know.
that's a lot. 2 structures that are basically by the code not allowed. 2.
2 structures, right?
Yeah.
That
2 big structures, by the way. It's not a shed.
right on a lot which can hold them. You know, that meets coverage requirements and setbacks. Like there's that lot is the right size for these structures.
Right, but you have 2 active front yards. So anyway.
Understood.
I just wanted to go to the point of, I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure you have a precedent in your package which is strongly on point.
I will look, and I wasn't looking the way that you just framed it, so I'd like to take an opportunity and just look and make sure. But I'm sorry, because I could not hear what you were whispering when the chairman was speaking.
I have 2 answers that
Okay,
may help
okay.
to enlighten the board.
I'm going to allow Bill Slight to answer some of your questions.
With regard to having 2 accessory structures on lots and relative to the size of the lots, you know, I've been an architect in this community for 35 years. Numerous times I've designed properties on what we call the 7.5 zone in the village, which is lots that are commonly smaller in area than this 10,000 square foot lot. And in almost every case that I've had the opportunity to work on, I've been able to, without seeking any variance, to have a residence, a pool, and even a 2-car garage, a 520 square foot garage, on a property that's within the 7.5 district. And those lots are very common throughout the entire village. They are probably the most common size lot that we have in the village. Now,
I'm not disagreeing with you, and I'm not, I
Yeah.
don't mean to interrupt.
I
was just asking, legal counsel, I mean, when we talk about precedents,
Yeah.
you're referring to cases that did not require a variance. So that's not.
Well,
it's
no,
not-
what I was addressing was Susan's comment regarding whether or not there's more than one accessory structure on what she was qualifying as small lots. I'm pointing out that in the district, in the village, the districts that have some of the smallest zoned lots have a residence and 2 accessory structures commonly, and commonly without the requirement of having a variance in order to get that. This particular lot is unusual in the sense that there are a limited number of lots in the village that have two, what we call two frontages for a through street. Now, having two frontages on a corner lot is common throughout the whole entire village. What I also wanted to address was the fact that there are lots, and Denise's research about lots that had been granted this type of variance in the past, her research only went back 2 years. Many years ago, but during the course of the history of this particular zoning code, numerous lots in the Murray compound between Murray Place, Barron, and Beach all have street frontages at two ends of the lot. All of them, and you can look on Google Maps or any of them, all of them are developed with swimming pools, tennis courts, garage structures. Now, of course, they're bigger lots, so some of them have 3 rather than 2 accessory structures. I am told by the building inspector when I first addressed this particular lot that he pointed out that particular subdivision to me as being one in which this particular zoning restriction had to be overcome by landowners in the village. Now, I know that they're bigger lots, but they're also, if you look commonly, they're bigger lots with more structures on them. So their commonality to this is the fact that they were able to improve their properties with accessory structures to the benefit and enjoyment of their families. Thank you.
Yeah, those are 3-acre lots on private roads, so that you're using as your example.
It's a private road.
No, they are not private roads. They are part of the village. They are maintained by the village, those roads.
No, I mean, your point's well taken. I mean, I understand. We can talk about how much, kind of, those are similar to.
You may
lots,
disagree with
but
my
I hear what you're saying.
examples, but I feel that in order to make the case and get it on the record, and the fact that the building inspector himself brought this up to me as an example of why I would need to have this type of a variance request. And he got out the map and he showed me those particular properties. So if I was shown that as an example, I would like to bring to you that as an example. Thank
I
you.
understand.
Should we see if anyone from the public has any comments?
Hold
or
on. Let me
do you have
see
more
if,
questions?
I guess we got that. Julia, that was my question. It really had to do with precedence, and
So I do have a question, which is, and it's something, because of it being a through lot, because there are 2 entrances to the property, therefore 2 front yards, I'm not sure, honestly, I'm not sure how to approach this. Could we determine that Hillcrest was the only entrance, so that there were not 2 access points to this property as a way to create a solution? Because the piece of property is significant enough where you might be able to consider this as a 2 front yard component that's not working, the 2 access points. Could one be not available or part of our considerations?
I'm sorry, is it a legal question?
It's a
or
question to you. It's basically whether you would.
You can
I
absolutely.
think Julia's question is whether it would be a reasonable condition that you would accept that you choose your access point and the other one is.
I do think it's a reasonable request. My only question for the architect and the homeowner is that they have, it's a garage, so I know they want to put their car in that garage.
So could we bring up the site plan?
I don't know if I want to try to even do this again.
Alex, can you bring up the site plan? Can you?
If you can hear me, I've been having some difficulties with Zoom, but I will give it a try if the applicant is not able to present.
I'll see if.
Have you been able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I wasn't sure yet that you were always able to hear me. Denise, I think if you go to the app that contains your plans, they should be shown, unless I'm mistaken.
Okay.
There you go.
Survey, okay, so this is the revised survey after we reduced the size of the garage. So this is the most recent survey. And,
So in
Go ahead.
answer to Julia's question, and I think it's a reasonable question, however, in this particular case, and it would be possible perhaps in other cases that may come before the board on lots similar to this, the required side yard setback for residences in this area is a minimum of 10 feet, which this exceeds only by 1 foot on its western side, and is pre-existing non-conforming on the east side of having only have 5 feet. So commonly a driveway is about 12 feet wide. So and also the village encourages, although it doesn't fully require, that there be some separation between the edge of the garage, the driveway paving, and the turf adjoining property line. We wouldn't be able to do either of those. And I submit to you that we also would have a problem in this particular case with this pre-existing building because of the way that other improvements have already been made along there. But even without that, it would be a great hardship to try to move a car, especially if you had to make at any time backing up a car within a driveway that was only 11 feet wide from building wall to property line, and without being in the hazard of either running into the hedge or into the building itself. So we wouldn't be able to meet that specific alteration as proposed by Julia in this particular case.
Too bad.
yeah, sorry, they've got that little drive, to, on the, what I would call the actual the front yard that fronts on Hillcrest, which is when I arrived where the car was parked. But
So essentially, you don't have room to go by the house.
exactly, we can't get past it.
Okay, so is there anybody from the public that wishes to be heard on this? I don't think. Where would you like to leave this? I mean, I think our questions, for the most part, have been asked and answered. Do you want us to close it?
Yeah, I think we're ready to close the record and hear I guess, does the board then deliberate at their work sessions? Is that the next step, or?
Whenever you guys would like, we can deliberate. I mean, I'll tell you that for me it's a balancing, okay, and that I'm concerned about, the cumulative effect of our granting a variance for more than just the pool. I'm fine with the pool. Okay, I think it's an important accessory structure. I think it's a primary accessory structure. Okay.
Got it.
I don't necessarily feel, and I don't think there's been a precedent where granting a variance for more than one accessory structure, is necessary given our balancing. In other words, the detriment to the applicant versus, the detriment to the neighborhood versus the benefit to the applicant. That's how I'm balancing.
Okay.
I'm coming out in favor of a pool, but not in favor of creating a neighborhood where everybody's moving in and out from two sides. It just doesn't, I can't really imagine how that would work, this multiplied 9 times.
Okay.
And I think Julia's point, resonates with me. It might have been a little bit different, had we been able to create one access point. But that's otherwise we'll continue to discuss it. We'll come up with a decision. For right now, it's just whether we need any more information, and I'm not sure we do.
I don't need more information. I agree with you that the pool would be acceptable. I think there should be some requirements for landscaping also, so that it.
We're amenable to that, absolutely.
But it needs to be, you'd be surprised what can happen. That it's not standing out there in this neighborhood, because I do think that there's a certain modesty, and there were, some people were concerned that their whole neighborhood would be completely changed by this, which half the time, maybe I do think it matters. And I also think that if what they wanted was a pool, they should get that. I'm down with that.
Julia, do you have any further comments, or we'll move to
No,
close?
I'm in agreement. I have really no real issue with the pool at all. I think that the accessory structure, putting the garage in the back with the two entrances, that is problematic to me. And I don't see being able to approve that at this point with the balancing that we've been presented with and hearing the other cases. I don't see where they relate to this circumstance as closely as the applicant presented it.
Just wanted to point out to the board that the access from that street is permitted by zoning. They may have to provide that to satisfy the parking requirement. It's really the accessory structure that is before this board.
What?
No, that provides parking. Can we look at the site plan again then?
Sure.
Is that,
Could you explain that? It's a pool.
no. In other words,
Oh.
what Alex is saying is that keeping that access open may
Be required?
provide them with parking spaces that are necessary.
Oh.
Right, that's correct.
How many
Whether or not
bedrooms?
there's an accessory structure there to hold, that serves as a garage, they may still have a driveway there with a car.
How many bedrooms are in the house?
How many bedrooms are in the house?
Oh, okay.
So then,
Sorry, what was the answer to that?
4.
4.
Who would have known?
Alex, how many parking spaces do they need to show on their site plan?
3 would be required, although if they're not adding bedrooms as part of this plan, it may be grandfathered.
Grandfather. Okay.
What? What's grandfathered
Oh.
in?
I'm not sure that they're required to add parking as part of this, but the zoning would require 3 spaces for a 4-bedroom house.
Why would they not be required to comply with the,
Maybe it was
Parking
done
rules?
before the,
I believe the house is existing. I'm not sure if it's being expanded as
But
part.
Yes,
now-
the house is existing. It's been remodeled, but it was existing.
wait, it was remodeled?
Yes,
Recently?
very recently. I mean, it
So
looks
doesn't
very
that
recent to
require
me.
that the parking get changed?
well, let's see, on the
Okay,
site
we need
plan,
legal help.
on the site plan, do we have 3 parking spaces without access?
Let's see.
I could answer Susan's question.
Sure.
Remodeling in the sense that the interior was improved. It wasn't remodeled in the sense
Wasn't
that
expanded.
that any addition or changes to the footprint occurred.
Were there added bedrooms? Were the,
No, in
in the reconfiguration, were there? the number of
at some
bedrooms
time in the
changed?
past, there, with benefit of a permit, the lower level was finished to include another bedroom and a bathroom.
And the bathroom? Doesn't that automatically cue in?
No, in fact, what counts are bedrooms and not bathrooms. You could have 10 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. Conversely, you could have.
But you're saying your client did not
Didn't
change
expand the
number of
house.
I'm asking where did the where?
No, they added a bedroom.
They,
did?
no,
I'm
no,
sorry,
no.
the footprint.
This owner did not. He bought the house in this condition that it currently exists. He made some improvements as far as painting and sanding of floors, things like that in the interior.
Well, that's
I'm
not
just
what we're
I'm just
asking.
trying to figure out, do we have 3 parking spaces without?
I'm just looking,
no.
and no, I don't. This gravel driveway here
You
is
do not.
definitely not 3 spaces.
But I think that, and when I was stepping to the microphone to point out, and Alex had brought this up, is the fact that in order for these lots, these 9 lots that we're talking about, to be able to meet the zoning code, and let's say it's an unimproved lot, and there are some that are, they would be required to have parking for, let's say it's a 4-bedroom house, which is common. They would need three places. So, that would be something that, but I also wanted to address something that you had talked about, and that was what you had characterized as being adding to the exits and entrances onto both Hillcrest and also Miller Road. There are actually 10 of these lots, including our client, that are through lots. But the other lots that front on either Miller or on Hillcrest in that strip of land are back-to-back residences where they share a common property line between them. And those properties, similar in width to this but not in depth, have driveways and residences, and in some cases accessory buildings of some type on their properties. So if you're talking about the traffic load or the number of accesses onto those roads, the more common situation there, because there are more lots that are not through lots but are just access to one side, is that in every single one of those lot cases, there is access onto the road frontage. So this will not change the character of that which already pre-exists.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm urging you not to see this as somehow becoming a detriment to the community where that particular situation already is part of the common neighborhood.
Alex, are you posting that up?
Oh, that's me, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, because if
I just wanted to show you the lot lines.
Yeah, no, if Bill could point to what he was.
May I?
Sure, that would be helpful.
Okay. So here's Hillcrest, here's Miller Road. Our property.
It's right, it's the one with the picture.
Is the
Yeah.
one here with the,
Mhm.
where it says the little picture. So it is a through lot. It is a through lot here, there's a through lot here, there's a through lot here, there's a through lot here, and then further up there's a couple more. But look at the rest of this. These are all frontages on either Hillcrest or on Miller Road. And you can see that they all have improvements, and a number of them have some type of accessory building associated with them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
In the backyard.
well, yes, they have, they're not through lots, I mean, but
Right.
they have they have the benefit of having a home and an accessory
No,
structure.
I see your point.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So our concept initially was, if there was a line through our through lot, you'd have one house on one side and one house on the other, and that's the way it would look. So we were trying to sort of mimic that in a smaller way, so that it didn't just, it didn't look like a pool from Miller Road, but looked more like a little house.
Mm-hmm.
That was the idea behind it.
Julia, are you okay? Do you have any other questions based on this latest conversation? Okay, I'll motion that we close for all purposes case number 314544 Hillcrest Lane. Can I have a second?
Second.
And everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next up, we have case number 3146, 71 Hill Street, LLC, 71 Hill Street.
Good evening. Linda Riley, 235 Hampton Road for the applicants, the applicant being 71 Hill Street, 71 Hill LLC. As you know, the applicant has withdrawn in the interim from the last meeting the special permit request to allow 2 market rate rental apartments on the second floor of Building F. And instead, in Building E, a modification is, in both buildings, modifications are proposed. In Building E, the modification that is proposed, which is shown on the plan by OCV Architects dated 1/5/23, will include 3 resort hotel suites on the first floor and 2 one-bedroom workforce housing units on the second floor. Previously, the plan had been to have office retail on the first floor, and there's 2,933 square feet according to the plans submitted with the application on the first floor, and 2 workforce housing on the second floor. So the second floor remains the same, the first has changed a bit. In Building F, we are proposing a modification of the interior configuration again, as depicted on the plans, again dated January 5th, from OCV Architects, that include 2 resort hotel suites and 2 workforce housing units on the first floor and 4 hotel suites on the second floor, with no habitable space proposed in the attic where we had second bedrooms associated with the market rate units proposed. With regard to Building F, we previously had retail office space continuing on the first floor, which was 3,688 square feet according to the plans, and 2 workforce units and 2 resort hotel duplex units. So we still have the same number of workforce housing units, 4. That hasn't changed. What we've done is add some hotel units, resort hotel units on the first floor. And as far as I know, because it's a special exception use, it is permitted as long as there's a special permit use granted by the Board of Trustees for that lot, for that use, for those uses, the 2 uses. One important effect of these changes is that we now show more than the minimum required number of parking spaces without applying the 60% calculation normally afforded to all commercial uses in the VB district. We believe that the 60% rule was correctly applied in the original application, and remind you that we did not request any parking variances, and none were noted or required as part of the turndown letter. Nevertheless, given that the board expressed concern that there may not be enough spaces for all the proposed uses, we have now submitted something that more than meets the code. Unfortunately, there were arithmetic errors on the calculations shown on the bottom of the site plan and zoning analysis that was submitted as of your deadline. We realized it after the deadline expired and quickly changed it. We do have them changed. I would like to point out where the mistakes are. Well, this is not the one with the mistakes. The site plan analysis that was submitted to you on Thursday showed under the required parking spaces, it showed a total of 42 spaces, even though the numbers on top of it added up to only 38. In other words, the total was depicted as being greater than its parts. So that was an error. It should have been 38 spaces that were 38 that were totally provided and required. Required. On the provided hotel suites, now because we have increased the number of hotel suites, there are now proposed to be, in addition to the 44 that were initially proposed, there are 9 additional suites. And there are a total of 53, therefore, suites altogether proposed on this lot. And that number was incorrectly cited in terms of the provided column. Up on the upper right-hand corner, it said 50, but actually there are 54 that are provided because we also added one extra parking space. We had previously shown 59 parking spaces here, and this is correct on the plan that was submitted. There are now 60. The architect found a place for another parking space in the southerly parking lot, increasing the total parking number of spaces to 60 instead of 59. I have, in fact, the corrected, you can see up on the screen what the corrected one is. We didn't submit it formally yet because of the deadline that we're well aware of. I do have extra copies with me tonight. I can hand them out to you tonight if you want me to, or just deliver them to Village Hall tomorrow. They're all done, and basically this is what the change is. It was just a mistake the first time. So we are now showing a total of 60 on-site parking spaces, which is one more than the total of 59 that would be required, given the requirement for a 1-for-1 space required under 116(5)(f) for hotel units and 1-for-1 on workforce housing units. Nothing here has 2 bedrooms, and so altogether, even applying with the 2 required employee spaces, we have one short of what would be required. And that's largely because, pardon me?
One more than what's required.
I thought that's what I said. Excuse me, I misspoke. We have one more than what is required. Excuse me. So we are left with only one special exception request here in this application, which is for the swimming pool, which will serve hotel guests only and therefore will not in any way increase parking demand. We think it's axiomatic that a private swimming pool for hotel guests is, in fact, a customary accessory structure for resort hotels, particularly in coastal areas. And there are no special conditions listed under 116(23) of the code for swimming pools in the VB district. It's simply because it is in a VB district that a special permit is required. But we contend that it meets all of the general conditions that still apply for that one condition, special exception use that we are seeking. And I would like a chance to go through some of the criteria under the general conditions. It has to be in harmony and promote the general intent as stated in 116(1) of the objectives, principles, and standards expressed in the master plan. And to that end, I want to point out that on page 65 of the comp plan that was just adopted September 2022, the addition of hotels units is encouraged, except in the VB district, except in the historic district. And this is not in a historic district. And it offers the following quote: hotels by their nature add significant street life and village activity for all seasons, day and night. It points out that this proposed hotel is allowed in the VB district, but recommends loosening the requirements for hotel units in the VB district generally. It promotes the utilization of land, this proposal, for the purposes for which it is most appropriate. 116(5)(f), picks out this lot essentially as one that is appropriate for the combination of workforce housing and resort hotel. And a pool is, again, we argue, a necessary component to a resort hotel use.
Right, but that's a straw man argument.
Excuse me?
That's what's called
How
a
so?
straw man argument. The master plan may argue for hotel
It
rooms,
does.
but it does not argue for pools. And I don't know if we necessarily agree that a pool is axiomatic to a hotel. I can rattle off 10 hotels that don't have pools with them. So just because the master plan wants hotel rooms doesn't mean it wants pools. That's the straw man argument.
Yeah, I think as I was listening to you, I agree with Luke. You were focused upon the reasons why I believe the trustees granted a special use exception for the hotel. We're focused on the pool.
Not to mention the fact that, given all the errors, I think you should have requested an adjournment for tonight. We spent the first 10 minutes of your presentation correcting errors. I can give you a few more errors to correct on this site plan that was submitted. And I think it's unfair to present information to us like this in a
The
verbal
last
fashion
minute, yeah.
when the numbers are what is very important and we're very focused on. So I don't think it was a great move. I think you should request an adjournment.
Well, we discussed that, we thought about it, but we thought it might be useful to show you what our proposed, the concept of eliminating the commercial use as altogether
We're
from the lot.
not here to
And-
discuss concepts.
Well,
As
we've
long as we're
also,
here, I'm happy to have a conversation about the swimming pool, because I do
Okay.
think it's something that we do need to focus on, in addition to whether there's adequate parking or not. I
Okay.
do think that I'd like to go back to something you said, which was that the pool is for hotel guests. If
Yes.
you're a guest at the hotel and you're staying there, let's say for 3 weeks, you don't anticipate that a hotel guest can invite a friend over?
I suppose that's possible, but
Right. So my point is, the way I would see it with what's possible is that when you have a swimming pool, you'll encourage more visitors. And I don't know where they're going to park. They'll probably find a place in the village or over on First Neck and walk across the street to the swimming pool that they've just been invited to. But, so I think the idea of a swimming pool could be problematic, not only as inconsistent with other accessory structures in a VB district, but also as one more way in which to exacerbate a parking problem. In other words, you're providing parking on site for guests, but then you have an accessory structure, a swimming pool, that will attract more visitors. And I'm not sure where they're gonna park.
well, we did point out at the last meeting, and it wasn't part of my presentation tonight, but we did point out at the last meeting that many of the guests do use public transportation to
No one
come
believes
to
that.
the,
Yeah, they might.
That's a fact.
No, they might use public transportation.
Yeah.
I think overall, not to, listen, we can go back and forth. The board truly thinks this proposal, for several reasons, just won't have enough parking. And instead of providing enough on-site parking, will impose a burden on the community, people looking for parking spaces off-site. And that's our concern. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but it's conjecture that people won't come with a car. We've had this conversation. Some people will come with 2 cars, and now you're saying we have a swimming pool, and visitors will come with more cars. And the way we're envisioning this is a parking problem.
well, it meets the code, though. And I have to keep repeating that. It meets the code.
I'm not saying, I'm talking about the swimming pool.
We're not
now.
asking-
I'm focused on the swimming pool. Okay, is the swimming pool something that this board will approve, under the guidelines of the code? I'm looking at it saying, I have some doubts about that for various reasons. One of them would be that although your parking complies with the code, as you say, we don't know because we really haven't had a chance to digest the numbers that you just presented. But having an accessory structure like a pool may exacerbate a parking problem.
But-
So now we're just focused on the pool. You have enough parking, so you say, but
I'm focused on the
should board
code, too.
allow a pool? And one of my considerations would be perhaps not, because it will encourage more visitors and exacerbate a parking problem.
But
That's all I'm saying. It's my viewpoint.
I'm sorry, my client would like to say something.
I'm good. I thought we were going to be really excited. Oh, Dee Dee Gotthell from office at 71 Hill Street in Southampton Village. We, really appreciated your comments from a few weeks ago, and I thought this was wonderful. We've taken the commercial, which eats parking places, and also the residential, which I thought was a good thing to add to the village, not necessary. It eats 2 parking places, and brought the entire thing into a very simple and completely as-of-right use. We're looking at 53 hotel suites. We have 4 workforce housing units, period. In terms of the swimming pool, yes, we need a special exception from you, but I would just like to say that if you're talking about the village of Southampton, and we just listened to, the idea of a swimming pool within the Hillcrest neighborhood is a good thing. I don't know how you want to have a 3, 4, 5-star lodging establishment without a swimming pool. I think it's absolutely critical for the brand of our village and an amenity that's expected and customary. But the parking is completely as of right now. So the only things that we're asking for are things that evolved over the last few years, because we started with a linear building. It was close to the 90%. It was a village business street. You didn't need to go more than 3-foot setback. You had 2 curb cuts. You had 90% coverage, and all those things that we're also here asking for. But in working with the planning board and the architectural review board, the idea of getting a little bit more green space, even though we realize that's not what you're looking at, it's what they were looking at, came up with this plan for only the 2 buildings, and to have the parking hidden from the community, and to have the swimming pool in the middle as a pretty well hidden amenity. What we do with the parking, we don't want to have people from the outside coming in to swim. We're also not trying to run a hospitality establishment as a police state. We could put some rules on, we could put some covenants on. We don't permit guests to invite their friends unless they sign liability waivers. We don't want the community to be coming into these swimming pools. It's not safe, and it doesn't work in accordance with the Suffolk County Health Department. Anyway, I want to go back to Linda. I don't want to upset her, but this was so good. This was 1-for-1 parking, and we found one to spare. We have a few dimensional, and the only significant request is for the swimming pool, which, I would ask, we need it for a hotel within the village. We don't want to be a motel in the village that doesn't have this amenity. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry, Linda. I had to say that.
I do just want to clarify.
Yeah.
I assume that the applicant was talking about parking in terms of the number of spaces, but there is still a parking variance request before the board.
For
Yes, there is, yes.
Which is for under 116-14K1 and 2, to not provide required shared alleyways for pedestrian and/or vehicular traffic, to provide shared parking facilities between adjacent lots. There is still that parking question before the board.
Yeah. Dee Dee did say when we changed the program, it was in direct response to your comments, Mr. Chairman, about going to the literal language of 1-for-1 for the hotel units, 1-for-1 for the workforce housing. That was our target. We have now met that target by going 53 hotel units, 4 workforce housing, 2 for employees, and 1 spare. So, we directly addressed what you had said very, very clearly was your reading of the code, even though we had different interpretation from the building department, that we could apply the 60% rule. We went to your definition to try to meet that. And so that that whole concept is in direct response to the idea of you have to have 1-for-1 on all these uses. The concept that's raised here and this is true for the pool as well, the concept of shared parking facility is that there's a churning that occurs in the parking facilities in a commercial zone. Not every store has 100% occupancy all the time, at the same time. What happens here is that not 100, you're going to have in the hotel rooms and in the residential units, you probably will have 100% occupancy at the same time, midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. All the guests and all the residences, they'll be in their spaces, but nobody will be in the pool because the pool has to close at dusk. So it is a churning that there may be people that come from the outside and they come in and they drive and they park their car somewhere in the lot or somewhere outside the lot. They come and they visit their friends and they go in the pool. But that's going to be during daylight hours. At the same time, there's a churning that occurs where those guests are all not in the swimming pool. They don't come to Southampton Village to sit in their hotel rooms. They come to enjoy Southampton. They come to drive other places. Some of them will go stay in the pool. Some of them will go elsewhere. That is the way this thing works. We all have been in hotels. We all know how it works, that you don't go to a wonderful area to sit in your hotel room and watch television. So there will be a churning. There will be people coming in there may be people coming in from the outside, but there will also be people going away. So parking spaces will be created. That is the concept that underlies that whole churning exception. However, and I will argue that the churning argument only works during the daylight hours, because we're going to have 100% occupancy, which is why we have to get away from, we need that variance that says, oh, we have to allow other people to park in these lots, whenever they want to. Your concept of a 1-for-1 says, no, you can't have other people taking those spaces. That's inherent in that argument of 1-for-1. And so if that variance is not granted, you can't say you got that 1-for-1, because some of them can go, to somebody who wants to go to the nightclub next door, or the movie, whatever the movie theater is going to be. Let's say it's a nightclub, okay? So they want to go to the nightclub next door, and our lots are more convenient than going around to the back of that one. So that our site would be a donor site, not a receiving site. Certainly during night hours, which is when the hotel guests and the families that live in the workforce housing, they're going to want to be in their places, their spaces, having dinner, watching television, changing from the day's activities. So the concept of that churning doesn't work when you know that you're going to have 100% occupancy for those uses during evening hours, during non-local business hours. So that's why those two things work together. On the other argument that we have about having maybe two people come in from different areas, come from two cars, that is not my experience. When my wife and I had our children and we would go to a resort hotel, we would come in one car. We're coming from one place to another, to the hotel. And so there are 4 of us in the car, and we get in to our hotel room. Now, when the kids are small, that's fine. They can share the room with you. But there comes a point, 12 years old, 13 years old, where you don't want them in your room anymore. So you get them an extra room, but you don't get them an extra car. So what happens is that you're going to have 4 people a family coming in to a resort hotel, and they take 2 rooms. That's why we have adjoining rooms. That's why we have connecting doors. That's my experience about how my family worked. It's probably yours as well. When your kids were growing up, they could stay in your room when they were little. When they're older, they have their own rooms. But again, they don't have their own cars. So the parking is critical here, and I agree with you that that's sort of the only community detriment, impact that this could possibly have. or one of the negative impact that it could possibly have. So I would argue that if you look at the way resort hotels work, or any hotel works, it is not people coming in two cars to one place. It's people coming from one car into one place, maybe two. That's the way these families work. That's the way resorts work. So for those reasons, it's important, I think, for us to see that there will be different uses at different times on the parking spaces. It's not all going to be 100% of the time. It's going to be a varied use at different times of the day. And we all know that from our experiences being in hotels and being in resorts. Now, when was the last time, as for the pool, when was the last time you went to a resort that didn't have a water activity? You know, when was the last, and particularly in a beach area, when did you go to one that had no pool? Because you can't use the ocean all the time, right?
Well, like Miami Beach, for instance, is filled with them. Every hotel west of Collins, I'd say only about 20.
But the water is different in Miami than it is in Southampton.
Does Topping Rose have a pool?
No, yes, it does.
They have a swimming pool? Does anybody go in that? Do they use that much? I mean, I didn't even notice that it would. Anyway,
It's there.
I don't know. We're trying to evaluate a particular location in the
Right.
center of Southampton Village. And I hear everything that you're saying. It's optimistic. It is somewhat anecdotal and conjecture. You know, we'd love to think that everybody travels in one car. The board is responsible, or takes seriously its responsibility for evaluating what is the potential detrimental effect on the community. That's so, to some extent, we have to imagine not the most optimistic, outcome here, but perhaps what could go wrong? Could people come with 3 cars? Could more guests come? Could this create a situation where there's parking overflow into the village? I don't think you can convince me that there's no possibility of that. I appreciate your passion, but you can't convince me of the fact or present it as a fact to me that every visitor is going to come with 1 car. Okay, I'd like to believe that, but it may not be true. And if it's not true, the village suffers the detrimental effect, not the hotel. And that's our concern. That's what we do. We protect the village.
Right.
You protect your interests, we protect the interests of the village, okay? And I don't think that you can guarantee that every visitor to your hotel will come with 1 car, okay? So our concern is parking. It wasn't our only concern.
Mm-hmm.
It was the original primary concern.
Right.
There may be other concerns, so I just wanted to
Okay.
adjust what you said, where you said our only concern
I'm
with
so-
respect to
okay.
the detrimental effect might be parking. It's still a major concern, and I'm sorry, but my opinion truly is that having a swimming pool may exacerbate the problem, okay? I don't know that you're going to be able statistically to convince me that having a swimming pool there is going to somehow magically self-correct, because the visitors will be there during the day when people are out and about, and the pool will be closed at night, and magically all of the parking will reconfigure and spaces will, come back. This is a high degree of optimism you're requesting from the board, and I can't go along with it.
Well, it's based on more than 20 years of experience of operating the Southampton Inn, which has a pool and spaces for the guests. And we see, and Dee can really talk to this much more precisely than I can, guests leave during the daytime. It's 20 years of experience seeing the pool is full, and there are people sitting out, having, a drink by the pool. They're sunning themselves by the pool, and there are lots of vacant spaces in the garage or in the parking lot because the guests are doing things other than going to the swimming pool. They don't stay in their rooms during the daytime, particularly when it's good weather, which is when that pool will be used. I can't give you statistics. I can't prove it empirically, but got to be experiential. You've all been to hotels. You've all been to hotels that have swimming pools and that are in wonderful locations. Miami Beach is a good example. You know, people don't stay in their hotel rooms, they go out. And in Southampton Village, you know, if you don't want to walk into the village itself, yes, you can, you get in your car and you go to the North Fork, you go to Sag Harbor, you go to, I don't know, Sip and Soda. You can drive to wherever you want to go because not everybody wants to walk every place they go. And there is no real public transportation network in the village itself except for bicycles, which we rent, by the way, that allows for people to get to destinations beyond an easy walk. So people take their cars. And that's my experience in the daytime. I don't know what your experience is, but that's the experience that we ask you to apply to evaluating the adequacy of this. The other thing to look at is, as Linda was reading the report, that the development of hotels is encouraged in the village. The reason for that is that there is an economic effect. It helps the businesses in the village. It helps the ambiance of the village as a resort, as a place to come and play. So we are losing hotel rooms.
I think we're clear on the comprehensive plan, and I agree that hotels are great for the village. But that
this is
doesn't
a resort hotel that has people staying for long periods of time. My understanding was that, like, people had weddings and all these things, that wanted to be here, but not. These are domiciles. There's no doubt
Right.
about it.
No.
These rooms are as big as the workforce housing are not bigger.
Right.
So that we're not having, I don't believe, maybe you can refute it if you like. So it doesn't serve the purpose that I understood hotels, when they were talking about this years ago, actually, in the village wanting to have hotels. I went to a lot of meetings. And then suddenly, my concern is that when it became a, quote, resort hotel, as opposed to a transient hotel, that the actual economic benefit is diminished. In fact, it may, you know, the resources of the village, it's 40, how many, 53 now?
53.
More domiciles in my head.
Okay.
Because you're maintaining, and I believe this is true, that people will just rent the thing for the whole summer. I get it. Or I used to go with my parents, and we go for like 2 months somewhere. But that is not what my understanding of why they wanted to have hotels in the village center. And so I find that troubling. And I also have trouble, I do not understand when the change was made. No one has ever explained to me why suddenly there was an emergency and you had to change the designation to a resort hotel.
Yeah. Well, Susan's point certainly speaks to Mark's point about the overall balancing. But just to finish my thought from before, regardless of the comprehensive plan supporting hotels, that doesn't mean that it supports every hotel proposal. And my view still is that your site plan has created a lot of your own problems for you. And, you know, we've added units instead of taken away or tried to scale it back. You could get me to the point where I could support this fully, and maybe even the swimming pool. But, you know, it's almost like this having your cake and eat it too site plan. I don't find it very neighborly that you're not connecting to the other lots and thereby needing the variance that Mr. Blinkoff pointed out. I think you need to reevaluate your plan.
Let me address first the domicile question because that Susan raised. These are not domiciles. These are hotel units. I understand that you can rent a cabin on the Queen Mary and take a trip around the world and stay in that cabin for a year. That doesn't turn the Queen Mary into a houseboat. It doesn't change the fundamental nature of the structure itself. It is a cruise ship. This is a
the usage in terms of the economic benefits.
No, it doesn't, because
Yes,
those,
this was, from my perspective, you can tell me what you think, but I'm gonna tell you what I think. That when people can stay for long periods of time, it does not provide, like if someone's having a wedding, lots of weddings out here, but they couldn't go to your hotel because you've already got it all booked up for long periods of time. I don't think there's gonna be a lot of toing and froing from your place. I don't. So the Southampton Inn has how many rooms?
90.
So there are times when there are just not enough rooms with these people with having weddings or having events, somebody's 50th birthday. But you're not adding to letting the to and fro to Southampton because of the resort hotel. I understand why it would be a good project.
Come on.
I would really love to hear the concerns. Is it the entire project? Is it too many units?
Yeah.
Okay, that's your thing, really, is it?
No,
Oh.
I have a lot of concerns, and I actually don't want to be directed by you, but I feel like,
okay.
thank you. Now you've added in a kind of, I realize that you claim you got the parking under control, but in so doing, in terms of traffic, it's a lot.
So let me ask
Parking,
something else.
traffic, And really, I do.
Julia has her hand up. I just want to make sure that we're.
Oh, okay, Julia,
Sorry, Julia.
sorry.
That's all right. I appreciate being heard. Frankly, I want to go back to Mr. Mohn's argument about the hotel. That what you're describing and what we heard extensively about at the last meeting was a different product than the products you already have produced very successfully at the Southampton Inn. We heard about the size of the units, we heard about the length of stay, we heard about it being quite different. And yet tonight, the argument has become mixed, that because you have the experience next door with the transient hotel, which has people coming and going, and I do understand fully, I think we all do, your perception about the parking. It was presented by you and by the applicant that this would be for longer term stays. People with longer term stays are going to the dry cleaner and they're going to the grocery store and they're running errands. But they're spending also more time in their homes than you might over a weekend. I am concerned that the parking is almost exactly where the number of beds, but I don't think it's going to be used that way. And in fact, I think that many people who live independently today travel with friends into this type of arrangement where they're sharing space, but they are coming in multiple cars. I have visited many visitors at the Southampton Inn. I expect I would in this space too over the years who have come today. I can't imagine that you would think that this would not be attracting of guests. But the final point, and the most important point to me that's been made by the board this evening, is that we have not had an adequate amount of time to look at your materials. You present some materials that had significant errors in them. And I think that to continue the discussion, assuming that we've been able to adequately digest the first few minutes of the presentation and incorporate it into our thinking, it's giving me more credit than I could take on. And whatever additional pieces that Luke has seen, I know you would learn, we'd all benefit from knowing what they are before we see this presentation again. I'm in agreement that we should be adjourning at this point. We don't have all the facts in front of us right now.
And thank you. And that's part of what I was hoping to just ask. I mean, obviously, the presentation, the two parking calculation, the numbers were wrong, and so we should adjourn and we will come back. But rather than come back and do something that we think is a really good thing, I mean, I really thought it was a good thing. I'd love to know what some of your other concerns are, if that's all right with the board, because we think it's a great project. To address Susan's question, it's a hotel. The resort hotel was a designation from the village going back, I guess, a decade. So this is not anything that we did. Yeah, it was. It was part of a quid pro quo. Well, so did I. Well,
in November, you had to have an emergency change of the.
No, the village attorney, I guess one left, another one came in, they put it down as a transient hotel. The transient doesn't permit the kitchenette, which we thought was a good thing. But I'd really like to hear, the parking is as of right, we think, but if it's the density that isn't so good.
Ma'am, if you just.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, but I noticed that Ms. McCormick was speaking, so.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, I'm just wondering if.
I don't think it's a reasonable request to be making until we have the corrected plans in front of us. To ask us to opine on what our concerns are when we don't have the correct plans.
Yeah.
I think is asking us to offer opinions that aren't based in fact, and that's what we do.
Okay. And is this appropriate to listen to your
I
other
can give you a
concerns?
couple other
I would
comments
love
for
to
the-
hear
for the
those.
architect.
Okay, thank you.
I think it has the potential to be a fantastic project. But like I said at the last hearing, it's really only schematically designed at this point to me. And again, not to beat the dead horse, but I think you can achieve a great project without the majority of these variance requests. We understand that or I understand at least, the front yard setback off of Hill Street is something that, needs to be looked at and is potentially a hardship on you. And there's the setback along Viridian Way for utilities, which seems reasonable to me at this point. But my sticking point is the parking and the flow-through request. I understand you have a spreadsheet and you need X amount of units to make X amount of dollars to make this make sense. But, a site plan that is laid out differently, I think would benefit you and would take a lot of these self-imposed hardships off the table for you. Just from a labeling standpoint and the architectural drawings being as most accurate as they could be. So if we look at the drawing, Building E floor plans, drawing number 1 says Building E, existing first floor. So really that's not accurate, right? It is an existing building, but the first floor that's shown here is a proposed first floor plan. I think it's important to distinguish between what is truly existing and what is proposed. Same thing for drawing 2. Actually, drawing 2 is correct, proposed second floor, right? So we can't really call drawing 1 existing first floor. Same for the drawing on the page on Building F. That is not the existing first floor. It is a proposed first floor within a renovated existing building. We don't want to give the impression that some work is not as extensive as it actually is. Just from a color coding standpoint, you're hatching these in gray. It gives the impression that the project is of smaller scope than it is. We should, every building that's getting affected needs to be really called to attention. Same thing though on the labeling on the site plan. We should be seeing existing building F proposed plan modifications. Same thing for Building E. It is the most accurate way to describe what you're proposing, and so we should go with that. That's all I've got for you. I think you can do this without these extensive variances.
So we can adjourn, but
I can't design it for you.
No,
right?
I hear
Julia
you.
is
Yeah, I hear
right.
you.
We should adjourn, and we should take special care to make sure that the drawings are accurate and complete, because we've been looking at these since they were submitted, and thinking about it and thinking about how they relate to the chairman's comments and how they relate to all of our thinking about this. And to spend the first 10 minutes like correcting mistakes, like Julia said, you're giving her way too much credit, you're giving me too much credit as well. Like, I didn't catch everything she said.
What set of documents should we be looking at? What is we don't want to know the iterations. What is the plan now? What is the
There's
date of
a
that plan?
substitution on the chart only, which is on the bottom of the site plan, which had 38 required spaces and 60 offered spaces. And 38 was with the 40%, which we don't need to discuss that. So from a parking, that's the chart right up here. No, that's not the right chart, but I hear you. Justin, do you have, there. It's 30, so we have, just on the provided, we have 54 hotel suite spaces provided, 2 staff, 4 workforce housing, 60 spaces, and that's what we're providing. So
And so
that's,
just going forward, if something is going to change from the previous meeting,
Mhm.
it must be bubbled, and it must be clearly called to our attention. So just looking at it, I should
It's
not
fine.
have to have anybody explain to me
Yeah.
what is different.
I totally agree with you.
Okay.
Support that, yes.
So I, just to continue that thought, I'd love it before and after.
Mhm.
This was
Yeah.
the prior plan. This is however you want to present it, a red line version, but this is how the plan changed. This is where we found additional parking. This was previously, not designated as a parking space. Now it is.
Mhm.
I just want to see the before and after.
That we will absolutely do. And conceptually, it was the one for one now. Variance, I don't really know what to do with that. It's to try to run a business where we don't, I understand your concern is that we could impact our community by being a donor. A donor of parking elsewhere. But in fact, we're very much more concerned with being the receiver of other people's parking, because we're all concerned with parking within the village. I don't know what this is. Sorry. I'm listening, I'm trying to hear whether, is it the parking? Well, we're as of right. Is it the swimming pool? I don't know what to do with that, because I don't know how you have a Southampton Village hospitality venue without a swimming pool. Is it the way it's presented? I agree with you.
I think the chairman's point about parking is kind of being missed.
I'm trying to, yeah.
And I don't want to speak for him,
No,
interrupt me.
you can
But,
repeat what I said.
when we, as Chairman Mark said, we have to do a balancing on
Absolutely.
this, right? And the detriment to the community versus the benefit to you, and the detriment to the community is potentially this let them eat cake parking situation where, it's just like, well, they can find a parking spot somewhere else. That would be a detriment to the community if suddenly side streets up there off of Hill are filled with parking. I don't know off the top of my head what the street parking allowances are like up there. That would be a detriment if we see people circling around. It's already a busy intersection. Are people going down the street doing U-turns in front of like the Southampton Club, for instance? Are people just sitting there waiting to turn left off of Hill onto Veradian, jacking up traffic, right? All of these are real concerns that while maybe your numbers work, we don't know because we don't have a correct chart yet, but maybe they work, there's still the reality of what may take place. And we have to think about 2 or 3 years from now when this thing is built, when everyone's gonna say like, oh my God, how did the zoning board not see that coming? What a miss on their part to not raise this issue about parking.
And just to clarify something, we understand that the balancing that we would do is for the shared parking facilities. We understand that it's a different test for the swimming pool. We look at whether or not that is, consistent with the master plan. And your obstacle is that you're in the village business district. How many swimming pools are in the village business district? Have you
Agreed.
presented any examples where this might be consistent with village business district, properties elsewhere in the village business district? I don't know. I doubt it.
I don't
there are
think there
swimming
is
pools.
any other lodging facility within the Village Business District. So
Right.
we have to look, we have to
Isn't
look
there
more.
the inn?
I'm sorry?
The inn across from Katina's, isn't that a lodging place?
It is, but it has, I mean, the other lodging
And so
facilities
is
have
the-
between 6 and
whatever
12
the
rooms.
post house used to be, not my favorite. There are two places I can think of off the top of my head next to each other.
We have the Inn on Main, we have the 1708 house.
Yeah, the
We did
1708
have the
house.
Village Latch, it had a swimming pool. You know, we have to have a swimming pool. But the parking has to be balanced, as you put it, and comfortable for you. It is opening it up so other people, I mean, maybe the thing to do is to require that we do each unit. And maybe we don't have 40, maybe we go back to 44 units and we do something else with Building E. I thought it was a good thing because the parking for hotel is less than the parking required for commercial. But we could do something else. We could make it a gymnasium for only our guests. So we have the pool, we have the gym. People are going to invite their friends. They're going to park. They're going to use the facility. No, I don't think so. I mean, are somebody going to sneak in? Yes. Can we account for every eventuality or possibility? No. But, I mean, we could do that. Something else with that Building E, for instance, and hold the number of units. I don't want to belabor this because it's correct. We need to.
We'll look closely at those plans when it comes to the
Yeah,
swimming
let
pools.
us,
We understand that the standards are different.
Mhm.
Okay, we'll apply those standards, very carefully.
That
It
would
is
be
challenging
appreciated.
because you're in the village business district.
yes.
You're
You
in,
shouldn't be.
you're in a bottleneck to the village. We're very concerned about this particular area. And as I said before, but I'll repeat it because it bears repeating, you have a situation which I think was overlooked. A special use exception was granted for a hotel, but
And workforce housing
And
in
workforce
return for
housing.
Viridian Way. That was the
No,
10-year-old package.
I
Okay.
understand. The workforce housing really is minimal compared to the number of
Units.
guest suites you have.
Yeah.
It's completely disproportionate. So I appreciate that everybody liked hearing that there were going to be some workforce units, but they're a proverbial drop in the bucket.
A spit in the ocean, if we're.
Compared to, now 58 units. So you had a situation where you're in the village business district, you're creating housing, however you want to
Well,
look at it.
I would object to that. We are creating
What do you wanna
hotel
call it?
suites.
Okay, you're
It's
creating
not
hotel
housing.
suites.
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry,
somewhat
for housing.
residential.
Yes,
To
we
me,
we
it's
have
somewhat
for housing.
residential.
Well, I don't.
You added kitchenettes. People will be staying overnight. At some point, I see that as a residential unit.
Okay,
Okay, people are staying overnight and they're cooking. Okay, I don't know at what point you agree that that's a residence.
I don't agree with that.
But-
I don't.
To my mind, it
It's-
is, you can make it quote-unquote residential. But then nobody ever said, wait a second, this applicant is going to look at the village business district and basically have no zoning restrictions that are customarily and commonly throughout the village applied to uses like this. You have no gross floor area limitation. You have no lot coverage calculations. Every
Well,
other
we
situation.
do.
You have no gross floor area. You're putting in 58 units on how much?
1.76.
What's your gross floor area calculation here?
Jack, I think the architect is on here. We have the gross floor area. That's just the parking chart. We have the coverage, gross floor area.
What's your, where is Jack here? What is your total gross
Right
floor
there.
area here?
Jack, why don't you come in and speak?
Yeah, it's on this chart. It is up on the screen now.
33,710?
Correct. Yes.
That's your gross floor area for guest use habitation,
Okay.
33,000?
That's totally including the workforce housing.
Okay, and what's the size of the lot?
Coverage,
1.76 acres.
Or Alex, are you saying that's coverage?
it's labeled as total coverage. There is no gross floor area requirement in the zoning district, so I don't know if it's
No, it's
calculated.
okay, we're asking.
But that's my point. There is no gross floor area calculation, and that's to some extent my concern and why I looked at this and said, this is incredibly overly dense. So what is the total GFA here?
You know,
I understand
double
that it's
it.
not.
Double it for two
No, but
floors.
Jack has the calculation.
Maybe not.
We
It could
have-
be.
Isn't it 1.76 acres?
Yes. It is 1.7.
Right. It's stuck in my head.
And then Jack, what's your total gross floor area? Not 33,000, was it 45,000?
It was on one of,
It is, you have to add it up.
It's 33,710 square feet.
I thought that was the lot
That's just-
coverage.
That's the
no,
coverage.
That's the coverage.
That's the hotel building.
Well, it would be,
Hotel building.
approximately twice that, yes, 66,000, 67,000.
So you have 66,000 square feet of, call it what
Living
we
space.
can agree to call it, living space?
Floor area. Floor area, yeah.
Okay, let's call it floor area. And you have about 80,000 square feet of property.
72,000, yeah.
Is it 72?
Well, that's if you're calling it 42,000.
74,000?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so typically in the village, you would be allowed 10% plus 1,500, so you would be allowed 8,900 square feet of living area. Yes.
Oh, in residential, yes.
In residential?
Yes.
Okay, so instead of 8,900 square feet, you have 66,000 square feet. Everybody else in the village who's living in their homes, using their homes to sleep there overnight, cooking there, as they will here, has to abide by a 10% plus 1,500, okay? And you're, instead of building 8,900 square feet of living space, you're building 66,000 square feet of living space
Right,
in
but-
the center of the village. So when I looked at this, my initial reaction was, why didn't anybody look at this and say, when we change the use, shouldn't we apply some dimensional requirements, some zoning requirements that resemble those requirements applicable to
Residential.
residential?
But this is village business.
I
So there is an
understand.
80% lot coverage. We are
I
not at the
understand.
80% lot coverage. If we have 74,000 square feet, I can't do 8 times 7, what would be?
56.
56,000, and you can go up 2.5 stories.
Julia has her hand up.
I'm sorry?
I just wanted the chairman to know that Julia has her hand up. I don't-
Oh, sorry. Go
Oh,
ahead,
I'm
Julia.
I can't see her.
Thank you, Alex. We don't see
Yeah,
Julia.
we don't.
No
She wants
problem.
us to stop.
Back again, I'm now 2 comments back, which is all this pushback about how these really aren't residences. I don't know of residences that have washers and dryers that don't have these amenities. This is not for an overnight stay. I recognize now that conversations move forward, but we are continuing to workshop this when we do not have the correct calculations, and I think.
Okay, Julia,
Okay, so
yes,
we'll-
I think that's
We'll
correct.
get the correct calculations. but
Yeah.
You asked me that question, what is it about this? Yes, it's Village Business District. I do think initially, at the inception of the change from use, from a typical use in the Village Business District, when you're moving it to the use that you're planning, some more thought might have been given to the fact that we're going to have people staying there overnight, that you didn't like the transient hotel because it didn't have kitchenettes. Now you have people cooking there, spending more time there, and you have 66,000 square feet of living space on, less than 80,000 square feet of property, and that seems very dense. But it's not dense for village business. It's
Right.
dense for,
And if we could take out the kitchens, we could take out the washer dryers, we could take out the swimming pool, but we are looking for a product here that is part of the culture and the fabric of the village of Southampton. We want it to be exquisite and elegant and gracious. We could put limits on people's stays potentially. This is a hotel, but it's like if you go to the Dell in San Diego, the Coronado, or what do you you have a product that has the amenities, and they're quite a bit more expensive, and they're very sought after. And you have the product in the older hotel, which are small hotel rooms, and they're both equally lovely. There are many examples, not in Southampton, because we don't have hotels in Southampton, but throughout the country and throughout the world, where you do have the Embassy Suites, the Rock Rose Resort. So it's something that we were trying to provide. But if that's a problem, we don't have to.
The way I envision those places, they have
Yeah.
green space, they have open space. There's
Well,
plenty
that's
of
where
room
we
for everybody.
started. Oh,
This
my
seems
goodness.
very condensed.
Okay, Joyce, I
So
don't
we'll
want
move
to
adjourn,
roll over that. Yes,
for
thank
all
you.
purposes,
Okay.
not a
You can-
problem.
Mark, just real quick, you can have all of the things that you're describing, elegance, I'm not necessarily anti-pool, but that don't look at it so binarily. Like, it's not all of those things have to be tied to this plan. You can get those things that you're looking for with a different plan. It doesn't require so many variances. Many of your variances are self-created.
But for right now, let's,
Okay.
I'll motion
Thank
to
you.
adjourn for all purposes, case number 3146, 71 Hill Street LLC. Can I have a second?
No, because you're.
Oh, no,
Oh,
I
sorry.
apologize.
No, I would have raised my hand.
You would have,
You're kind of continuing.
you wouldn't have been shy?
I'm gonna
Okay.
be here and listen.
Okay, so I'll motion to adjourn for all purposes, case number 3146, 71 Hill Street LLC. Can I have a second?
Second.
To end.
And then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then we will motion to close the hearing for the Zoning Board of Appeals, January 10th, 2023. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Julia.
Can I just?
Before we sign off, I just wanted to talk to the board about